The digital transition. The Digital Transition, a podcast series created to assist those tasked with implementing digital strategies, where we will share our knowledge and experiences to support you in your transition. Welcome to the Digital Transition podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Hildebrandt, and today I'm talking with Callum McInnes and Paul Candy from Assa Abloy. Now, significant opportunities for efficiencies are out there for manufacturers and suppliers in the construction industry through the adoption of digital processes. Today, we'll discuss Assa Abloy's journey so far. But before I talk to Callum and Paul, I need to talk to you about our exclusive podcast sponsor, NBS. NBS, through their key product, NBS Chorus, integrates seamlessly with your building information model in ArchiCAD, Revit, and also now Vectorworks. This increases the productivity of practices that are using BIM authoring software and reduces conflicts of information between your deliverables of your specification and your documentation. Now, to learn more about NBS, head over to their website, www.thenbs.com.au. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us today, Paul and Callum.
Thanks,
You're
Nathan.
welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Callum, for those that are not aware of who you are, and for people that have been in industry here in Queensland specifically, we'd know you pretty well through Assa Abloy, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners from across the globe?
Yes, thanks, Nathan. It's a pleasure to be invited. Over the past 4 years, I've had the responsibility of developing the specification opportunities for Assa Abloy entrance systems in the Pacific region. I'm a member of the Assa Abloy Entrance Systems Specification Council, and I manage the sales team in the region. I am very excited to work with my Assa Abloy colleagues in the implementation and rollout of the Opening Studio platform across the business.
So what did you do before Assa Abloy, Callum?
So prior to Assa Abloy, I was basically involved in the aluminium industry with curtain wall shopfront design for 28 years. So my background is in the building facade area.
So you do come from a complex, essentially, enclosure device to a complex devices in terms of how buildings essentially can operate in the hardware sector.
That's correct, Nathan. It's complementary. From where I came from to where I am now, and there's a lot of networks and people in the industry that I continue to work with and have done for many years.
Now, Paul, you've had an interesting journey as well, and there was a period of time, and it's kind of similar to some of the famous actors around the world, or should I say New Zealand actors. We try to claim you as our own. There was a period of time where you did take up residency in the US, and a person from Assa Abloy from the US actually took up residency here in Australia. But for the people that aren't aware of your history from Assa Abloy and possibly prior to that in terms of your career, where you've come from, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, sure, Nathan, and thanks for having me on the podcast today. I'm the Vice President for Commercial Excellence for the Opening Solutions Pacific and Northeast Asia division of Assa Abloy. And in that role, I basically cover anything to do with our customer experience. So branding, communication, websites, specification, BIM, business strategy. I've been involved in the specification and architectural side of our business since I joined Assa Abloy in 2009, and in that time held a number of different roles in New Zealand and Australia. And as you alluded to earlier, I spent 5 years very recently, up until May this year, living in the US, where I was heading up the global BIM and Opening Studio team for Assa Abloy.
Now, Callum, we well and truly know who Assa Abloy is because you guys deal with it every day, and I've specified Assa Abloy products throughout my whole career. For the listeners that don't know who Assa Abloy are and aren't aware of what Assa Abloy produces as a company, can you just give an insight into who Assa Abloy is and the brands, products that you manufacture and sell across the globe?
Thank you, Nathan. Being a global business with a focus on both digital and physical doors, Assa Abloy can provide solutions across many sectors and do so throughout a number of divisions within the Assa Abloy group. As Paul mentioned earlier, he's heading up the Assa Abloy Opening Solutions business, and I'm involved with the Assa Abloy Entrance Systems business. There are several other groups within the company, but essentially our two businesses provide products to the door industry, and some of the brands that you may be familiar with through the Opening Solutions business would be Lockwood and Yale and Assa Abloy itself. The brands that come through the Entrance Systems business are brands such as BSAM, Record, Ditec, Mirage, and they're names that should be familiar to everybody in Australia and the Pacific. The other parts of the business that we have focused on just recently are door systems, and so some familiar names that you may be aware of, such as Spence Doors, Pyro Panel, Pacific Doors, and New Zealand Fire Doors, manufacture and supply doors. Many of these products have momentum towards digitalisation, and some of the products and brands that work particularly focused in this area are Placard, Biosite, Tracker, and Global Technologies. So there's a lot of companies within the group, but essentially all of the companies are focused on the door solution.
Yeah, it's about how you get in and out of buildings, so you're making life easier for people and you touch people's lives every day. But Paul, you've had a long involvement with Assabloi's digital implementation. I remember meeting you at a Built conference a number of years ago, and you were sharing at the time Open Studio, which Callum's involved with as well. But are you able to share with the listeners a bit about Assabloi's digital journey?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we have probably many digital journeys in Assabloi. As Callum alluded to, we have a lot of brands in our business, and I think that's gives us a lot of strength when you look at our product portfolio, but it also introduces some complexities for us in terms of digital implementation, simply from the fact we have a lot of brands and we have a lot of companies. So what we set out to do was try to have a platform for specification that could cover all of our brands across our entire business, so that people weren't having to deal with a specific company or a specific brand to get product specified. And when we started, I guess we started hearing about BIM and people having BIM requirements more than 10 years ago now. That was when we thought, well, this is huge. If we're to try to have a solution for everyone that covers everything, then this will be a never-ending journey. So that was when we started looking at other ways that we could tackle BIM, and that was when we found a product in a company, in fact, based in Phoenix, Arizona, that had built a solution that could integrate with Revit at that time, and we felt it was a good fit for Assabloi. So when we started looking for solutions for BIM implementation within Assabloi, we discovered a company in Phoenix, Arizona that had started to build a solution around openings, and in those days solely for Revit. And we thought that was a good fit for us. We spent some time working with them to turn it into a specification solution first and foremost. And from there, it's really evolved. And our first Revit plugin was for Revit 2011. So we're now more than 10 years of integration with Revit. And subsequently, I think we've now built three, or we're building our third add-in for ArchiCAD. So it's been quite some time already that we've been on this digital journey, but a very, very exciting place to be part of, and we will continue to evolve as customers use the platform and we hear about their needs.
Now, from a manufacturer standpoint, there's two kind of benefits that you want to try and achieve, or, there's two kind of sides to a story. First of all, there's optimization of process internally for you as an organization. But secondly, there's an opportunity there for your customers to benefit. So one of the conversations I've had with manufacturers in the past was around the fact that if we take out of the equation that your product might be slightly better and the products are actually equal, yours and your competitors, if you make it more accessible and easier with technology, then you'll find that you'll get specified more. Now, what are the kind of benefits that you have found in introducing or implementing Opening Studio across a vast, some people would underestimate how near impossible it is to an organisation as big as Assable is to actually implement something across all of the subsidiaries. Have you actually achieved benefits, or has it been like headbutting? Because I can imagine trying to implement something in a government agency is bad enough.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think to answer your question, it's both. We've definitely had headbutting. You won't get that in an organisation our size.
You will.
You will get it. You won't not get that in an organisation our size. Having said that, it's also been a catalyst to bring the organisation together, because Opening Studio is an Assa Abloy platform. It's not just for one part of our business. So it's actually encouraged more collaboration across our total business. And I think that we perhaps didn't expect to see when we started out. I'd say where we also see benefit is just in the people like interacting with digital tools, and if you can make it fun and you can make it something that people want to use and it makes them more efficient, then you will derive benefit from that as it is. So from a customer point of view, and the challenge has always been having information and formats that we can both exchange and understand. And really, what Opening Studio has done for us there has standardized that as much as it's possible to standardize anything in this industry, that we now have a sort of a common way in which we can exchange information. And ultimately, what it's helped us to do is make information more accessible. So I think this is websites brought a level of availability of data, but it didn't necessarily make it any clearer or easier to understand. So having a tool like Opening Studio where you can really hone in on the detail of the solution that's being provided has been a big benefit for us in that space.
Now, Paul, that's obviously the benefits. Now, one of the fun things that we always find with regards to implementation of anything new is the challenges with the change management process. And we're all aware of the challenges that we face with, individually, it's normally people that are the hardest thing to move. But apart from people, because we all know that's the first answer everyone's always going to say, are there any specific key lessons that you would have learned on your journey so far that other manufacturers that could be listening to this podcast today might go, oh, thanks for that little bit of insight? What some little takeaways that you'd say if you're going to start this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first one I would say is don't assume anything. Don't assume that people do things in a particular way. And if one person does it, don't assume that someone else does it. I think that we learned the hard way fairly quickly. And so perhaps we started off by tailoring a little too much, and then that meant that solution we tailored for one customer didn't work for another one. And on the back of that, though, I would say that you need to have flexibility in the way that your solution works, because it will be different for different people. Different people want to get different things from it. So as much as it's great to have standard ways of working, you also need to be flexible in what the solution can provide.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with you on that, because I know that I work totally differently to a lot of other people, and I don't know why, but I don't know. But that's a perfect line in terms of don't go too far down a path, down one journey. I think that's actually a really good approach. It's got to be generalized, but then you have to have some sort of finite process that ties it all together. Now, Callum, you're the man on the ground working directly with architects, and people specifying products and having contractors install them, or your team installing components as well. What has been your experience, over the last 4 years in Assa Abloy, but then you've had a long career in the construction industry as well. What have you seen? Have you seen much change in what people are asking from you, from the manufacturing side of the fence, in terms of what they're actually wanting from you, and how much has it changed?
Well, firstly, Nathan, the planet loves BIM and digitalisation. Gone are the days of ploughing through forests of plans to find a door schedule, and then back again through the next forest to find the elevations and floor plans and hope that they match up. So, spending countless hours going through reams of paper, trudging along to architects' offices with manuals and books and all of this weight of paper is going. And, obviously from a sustainability point, that's fantastic. But from a work efficiency point, it's even better. And it allows us to interact for longer with more focus on the actual outcomes and the design solutions and the design intent and the requirements of the client, the architect, designers, and it allows us to just to work a little bit more focused on that part of the business rather than having hours upon hour just going through it all. The desire to enable the information management from the outset through to maintaining consistency throughout the project is now very much more a front of mind thought with people, and there's a better understanding that if you do the work early and prepare properly and keep things, if you have a tool that allows you to manage from woe to go and keep things in line and in order, then the outcomes are quite sensational in a lot of areas. And when I say from woe to go, in our business, we look after the ongoing life cycle and maintenance of the product. And so right from the concept to the inception, to the design, to the manufacture, to the installation, and then to the ongoing maintenance life cycle of the product is enabled and enhanced by using a BIM platform.
With this platform, Opening Studio, so this is a broad brush tool for all of your products that range from locks to hardware to actual full automated doors that come through from Bessem and the like. How is Opening Studio actually assisting architects and also, from your perspective, Assa Abloy during the specification and documentation of the project? And I guess the reason why I'm focusing on that at the start is because we've got to get that part of the journey right first before we can even think of tackling the operation phase.
So by using Opening Studio, there's a lot of assessment that can be done in terms of building compliance and understanding that the correct product is in the correct place. It's very easy to put in and put out different components in the door set to enable change and to compare the outcomes of any change. The benefit to work in a digital platform rather than a verbal or a paper type of situation where you're looking at a 2D and not understanding exactly how that would interpret into a 3D situation. And I suppose, there's advantages if you need to go to a model, that it will show clash detection and things like this. You can actually understand the detail of the product down to its geometry and put things in place that actually suit not only from an aesthetic point, but from the geometry and through to the relevant standards that apply to that particular product in that scenario or in that situation.
Now, Callum, I'm going to throw the spanner in the works and be the recalcitrant for once. And there's a component of me that I am very much a person that believes in change, a person that adapts to change. But I've been working using BIM as a process to produce my documentation for, say, 18 years currently. So the door schedule itself would produce itself based upon what was in the model. Now, I have a very good contact in Assa Abloy called Mr. Greg Reish, who has written every single door hardware schedule for me forever. And the only recalcitrant kind of component of me is that trusting a junior architect or an architect in Opening Studio to be able to identify the correct, door hardware versus an expert like Greg, who's done it for 40, 50 years. He's an absolute legend when it comes to the technical side. Is there the chance, and it's not anything against your tool specifically, it's something that I think is just like a big question mark on everything in industry. Is there a chance that if too junior a person is given that job to plug in that hardware, they could get it wrong?
So Greg is a stalwart.
No, but that's the thing. There's a component of me that will always trust 40 years of knowledge. I learnt under, unfortunately, the gentleman that's passed away, Mr. Frank Moss. He was a person who worked until his mid-80s, and I learnt so much about how architecture works and how buildings go together and how to build a building properly from him. So there's that part of me that always respects that really strong intellectual knowledge. And it's not a critique of the API, but it's more of a question mark about, technology can assist to 80%, 90% of the way, but is there that 10% where Assabloi has the expert still that you call upon to then plug that information or provide that assistance that ensures you get a good product? Ensures a dangerous word for a PI. Sorry, guys.
Totally agree with your point, Nathan. I mean, the idea behind Opening Studio is not to replace the knowledge that people have, but to actually help facilitate getting that knowledge into the project. So really what we're trying to do is improve the level of documentation, the level of communication, but there's still a person that's behind that making decisions about which products get specified for an opening. Because in the end, no matter how much computer programming you do and how much AI you build into things, there's still when it comes to hardware and compliance and potentially life and death scenarios, human decisions is still key in this process.
Yeah, well, it's not specific to hardware or door hardwares or doors. It's about everything in the specification process. The scary thing is that the second it's in a computer, people automatically think it's right. And I know that Greg actually uses Opening Studio in the background to actually generate the schedule anyway. So he's just doing it in a different format. He's taking all the projects he's worked with me over the years, and if it's on the same site, he'll use the old one as a basis to build it up. But it's just an interesting kind of point, I guess, for me to understand. It's a great foundation point, but you still need smart to operate it in terms of the knowledge of what the building needs to get made of. It doesn't take away that expertise, and which is the whole thing where people say, architects will be redundant in the future or quantity surveyors will be redundant. You still need smarts to operate these things to make it work and get a successful project.
Exactly right. I mean, technology is great for improving people's ability to make good decisions, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do here is get the best outcome possible. And by using technology to do the simple things, the straightforward, repeatable things, then we can leave the human resources to make the decisions that need some more discernment, for want of a better description.
Now, but it also, by having a platform as a database that ties back to a model, it means it tracks changes. So you can, if a door's deleted or added and hasn't been given the appropriate hardware, it identifies and people can then realise they need to attach it. And we all know how much that happens throughout a project. And, I'm sure Callum's experienced to having people, dealing with, there's this door on site, but there's no hardware. And I'm assuming that would have been the problem in the past. Now, you talked about it before briefly, Paul, the platforms that Opening Studio is actually available on. So first of all, it started as a system or a database that worked directly with Revit. Now you've got one that works with ArchiCAD. Are there any other platforms that it works with at the moment?
Yeah, so interesting discussion around platforms and integrations that we've done with Opening Studio. So definitely Revit. We support the current version and the 3 prior, just like Autodesk does. With ArchiCAD, we've been progressively building new add-ins for the last few years. So we're currently working on version 25. We also have done some, I'd say, perhaps lower level integration work with PlanGrid and with Procore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in that sort of contractor owner space, we'll continue to see more integrations come in the coming time, because people want at least data available in the applications that are most relevant to them.
Yeah, well, it makes it hard, doesn't it? Because then if you're being a global organisation with so many different brands, your customer base in terms of the specifier side of it, not customer in terms of asset owner, the customer side has so many different tools that they use to generate information that it would be very challenging as an organisation to try and keep on top of that and try and essentially make, dozens of plugins essentially.
Exactly. We have to go where where it makes commercial sense for us, but also I guess try to be as flexible as possible, at least when it comes to sort of data output formats, so that we can try to satisfy as many requirements as possible.
I'll throw one out there for you. Have you guys considered IFC as a method? Because then that removes the actual native formats altogether. That's just a nice spanner to throw at you.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a fair question, and the answer is yes. We've looked at IFC several times. The reason, well, there's several reasons that we haven't gone down the IFC road at this stage anyway. In terms of extracting information from a native application like ArchiCAD or Revit, we get a really high level of data that we can model ourselves in Opening Studio using our modeling engine. And to do that from an IFC file is actually a lot more complicated. Because Autodesk and Graphisoft both have APIs for their applications, it's been the best road for us to get meaningful transactions that really can help us deliver in the specification process.
Well, it's just some food for thought for me. It's just something that I thought about, and I'm thinking we should try and find a solution for you with the people, because the whole thing is that that native software, for example, is only used at that one stage.
Yeah.
And you might find that the asset owner then wants to do the next stage, and that's done in a different software that might not be covered by your tools. So that's an interesting point for me to think about how to solve that problem for you, because it's not just for yourself. It's we've got to think of a solution that works for all manufacturers across the world, and the different pieces of the puzzle, they all have different challenges. Door hardware I've always looked at as how do you actually compile all that data into one thing, and it always takes me back to this concept of the GUID concept that a BIM has, a globally unique ID for an element within a model. And I think to myself, well, why can't each specification of something have a similar ID or a barcode for a whole system, that then that code is provided to each element that's put into the model, each product that's put into the model, and then a global database that's managed by, it has to be a government agency, because it couldn't be a manufacturer, because a manufacturer could go broke tomorrow, or the website could die or whatever. And then you plug into that and you can pull all that information up. Now, that's kind of jumping to the kind of futurist kind of approach of things. And, the problem also for you guys being a global company is every country will disagree on the way to do it. So there won't be one answer. There'll be too many hoops to jump through. Callum, I want to go back to you, and I know that your products are going into quite a large project here in Brisbane, in Australia, in Queen's Wharf. Now, Queen's Wharf, for people that aren't unaware or have seen it, is a $3 billion casino development project which takes up a very large chunk of the Brisbane CBD on the northern side of the river. And it has very stringent BIM deliverable requirements. Now, that's only one project, but Callum, have you seen any clients being very descriptive yet as to how they want their information delivered at the end of the construction for operations phase? Have you seen any detailed requests actually come through where you have to do things slightly unique for that client?
Not to the extent of Queen's Wharf having a 99-year life cycle to come through with that, but we certainly do see FMs and government projects such as hospitals around Australia coming through with a request for maintenance contracts. And then the best option for us to deliver the maintenance contracts is to manage the life cycle of the asset. And so if we have the project in the BIM platform, it's quite easy to transfer the asset register or the assets into a format that we can then pass on to manage the life cycle of the products and the ongoing maintenance. So what automatic doors in Australia under AS 5007 have a requirement to be serviced 3 times a year. So in order to manage that and the life cycle and then move forward with CapEx and spend on door and et cetera, and particularly in places like hospitals where doors they earn their money, the doors in hospitals, they work very hard. It's important to have asset registers that align up with what was actually installed into the building.
Yeah.
So we have found some government bodies starting to ask some questions in relation to that. We haven't had any specific BIM requests just yet, but there are discussions ongoing with some major projects around Australia.
There's two sides, obviously. There's the hardware side, which is an area where you don't maintain, and it's just the hardware gets supplied to the contractor. The contractor installs it, and let's just talk really simple door hinges. So they're an asset that gets handed over to the client. That's not an asset that typically Assa Abloy will maintain. Then you have your automatic doors sector. So the specific area that you're talking about is that where an architect will specify an automatic door, then the builder installs the automatic door, or your team will install the automatic door, and then throughout the life of the built asset, you then will maintain, you'll try and win a maintenance contract. Or is there a point where someone else might maintain your doors? Is that sort of competition that's actually out there?
Yes, it is, Nathan.
Yep.
Yeah, that can occur and does occur.
So the advantages of having, say, opening studio in place where you're specified at the start means that your specification can be tied to everything through the design and construction phase, and then when it comes to operations, as a manufacturer that offers a servicing agreement for what's been installed, you'd essentially have a competitive advantage as a manufacturer having a well-integrated system in place at the start, so then you can actually pull that data straight away without having to manually create it.
That's right. And by working with our other companies within our group, for instance, we have a service contract on a major hospital that has a life cycle and asset replacement program in place, sort of managed through their CapEx. And just recently, we've had discussions, and we've actually moved to not only replacing the automatic door operators, but we've replaced the full doors, including the door leaf and the hardware associated, so that the complete opening has been refurbished in the life cycle plan of that particular facility. So every component on that opening was Assa Abloy, and it is a hospital that was supplied in the original construction through opening solutions and entrance systems And now we're putting the door leaf in there and Lorient seals, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole package is managed by us. So moving forward, it would be common sense to try and get to the point where we're having those door systems in those locations managed through a BIM platform.
No, it all makes sense now. We've kind of started talking about the future, but I guess I'm keen to hear both of your views because you both bring, I guess, a similar but slightly different perspective on this. I'm hoping, or I'm assuming, unless you guys talk to each other too much and you're both assimilated too much. But I'll start with you, Paul. Where do you see manufacturers in the future and digital workflows and how that's going to be adopted, and implemented? I guess we could have a whole hour discussion alone about the future for manufacturers. And I know that we do after a few drinks at a few of these conferences, but have you got kind of an insight of where you think things are going to go from your end?
I think where we're heading is that people will want information, they want it accessible, and it'll be platform agnostic. You will need to be able to get it from whatever you're using. You want it to be reliable and you want it to be up to date. So I think for manufacturers, it's about being as flexible as possible and ultimately ensuring that the information you provide is accurate and it's up to date. I think those are the kind of critical things that we have an obligation to deliver on. And then from there, it's really about the user experience, right? So if I'm on site as a facility manager and I have a breakdown or I want to replace product, then I need ways to conveniently access that information and maybe get to the point where, and I think this is a little bit into the future, but maybe from the door in the case of openings for Assabloi, you could, from our mobile app, you could say, I've got a problem with this opening and I need some service, maybe even order replacement product.
Yeah, well, that's the whole concept of having, QR codes on a lot of different things or RFID sensors. So, Callum, what's your views on the future?
Absolutely, moving down a more user-friendly situation where, these are things that we're working on. Our R&D teams are feverishly focused on finding ease of use products for the consumer, ease of use products for the construction companies in terms of the installation methodology, and provide solutions that will give security to people and deliver product that is easy to use, not complicated, but effective in its security solution. So, the digital platforms, the telephone, your mobile apps, et cetera, controlling your house from your iPad, unlocking doors, locking doors, et cetera. I think that's what people want, and I think that's where we're headed.
Now, one thing that I can't remember if we've had conversations around this before, but one of the things that I think is the biggest challenge for construction sites, and this is on tight programs and it's more suited to the smaller projects rather than the monster ones, is lead times and the challenges that we face where we have a project that might only have a construction time frame of 4 to 6 weeks, and documentation's always being done up to the last moment. But imagine a world, and this is where a platform like Opening Studio would work quite nicely, is whereby the second that the designer essentially makes that design decision and plugs in that hardware is required or that door is required for that project, that would then set that would then kind of forward plan your manufacturing process. Now, we're all well aware of the world of substitutions and how much that kind of throws spanners in the works there, or if a project got designed and didn't get constructed. But it'd be interesting to see whether or not there was a gate system whereby, and this might be facilitated through blockchain moving into the future, whereby as soon as the designer's made that decision, those really long time frame products can start getting manufactured. I look at, Callum, this is going away from doors and door hardware, but it might work well with the automatic doors in the sense, but because it worked probably better with glass doors and windows and the like, but whereby the model that the architect creates in their project essentially is the shop drawing, because they've modeled it accurately in their model. That is the basis of what your team just added a few additional pieces of information to enable cutting to occur and assembly, whereas at the moment it's completely isolated in its approach. So from my mind, it's about those two kind of key things about lead times and knowing that, you may need, or if a major project comes on like Queen's Wharf, and you know that you don't have that many locks available, it's completely unique for you guys. And you go, well, okay, today we have to, forward plan for the next 3 months that we're going to need to triple production on this specific lock set. Those type of things are where I think that could be great gains. But then, as both of you have raised about the ability for the data to be accessible whilst it's in operation, so that you can perform those tasks where you need to get maintenance, or you just need to know where it is so you can order a replacement. It's like how, as simple as it is, you look into a light fitting and they have a sticker normally in there to say what code the lamp is. I think that to me is such a simple thing, but sometimes gets lost and forgotten. But has that opened up any more thoughts on the future for you guys? As I said, Nathan, we could talk forever.
anything that can help us forecast would be gratefully appreciated. Forecasting is an area that we spend a lot of time on in order to provide the services that we're aiming at and meet our targets and keep the customers satisfied. But, the best forecasts come from the best information. And unless the information that we're getting through is accurate or
complete,
is complete, then that makes it difficult. And of course, as you mentioned, the danger of DNC coming in to upset that situation there with changes is always a risk. And so we would love to work with industry to develop something that would help us with our forecasting and help them with the delivery of product to their construction site.
Yeah, I know. There's just so many opportunities there. And it makes it hard because you have so many different people doing things in different ways. So you wouldn't be able to pick up all the design stuff if it's a design construct contract. And the time frames in which you're going to get that information would be, in the early days and a long lead time to the future from the designer specified perspective. And then when it's contractor or subcontractor led, it's last minute. They go straight down to their local hardware, supplier like John Barnes or whatever, and basically here's the set. I need all of this supplied. So it'd be very challenging for you guys on that front. But Callum and Paul, thank you very much for your time. Now I have one final question. This is the one that I ask all of my guests. And Callum, I'll get you to go first. What does BIM mean to you?
Nathan, I see BIM as the management and the new order of information. Across many levels, providing control management, improving efficiencies, right throughout the life cycle of the project, and it will continue to make the specification and the scheduling of doors better.
Better, I like it. It's going to make it better. Now,
well, we can strive to make everything better. It would be great.
Good as better. But now, Paul, what does BIM mean to you?
So if I could sum up BIM in one word, I would say BIM means collaboration. It's collaboration from the architects to the specifiers to the builders to the owners, and I guess to touch on Callum's point, it's collaboration through the life cycle of the building. So it's something that lives and breathes as the building goes through its life. That's how I guess I would sum up BIM today. Probably different to how I said BIM 10 years ago, to be honest.
No, well, the one thing I really like doing is looking back on this on an annual basis to see how the maturity of market changes, and my views 10 years ago were completely different to what they are today in terms of how we do handle things. And it's only because you start to learn a little bit more each day about how it works. But the takeaway for today is collaborate better. I like that. You boys together, collaborate better. Now, thank you very much for your time today, Callum and Paul. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us. We've made it around this thunderstorm. Despite a power loss partway through, we've done well. But for more information on Callum, Paul and Assa Abloy, please head over to the podcast section on the Skewed website for further reading. I look forward to sharing our next podcast with you in a fortnight's time. Until then, good luck with your digital transition. The digital transition.